Brazil is a land overflowing with mysteries. Beyond the vast Amazon rainforest, deeper than the rivers that cut across its heart, and older than the legends whispered by its indigenous peoples, lies a theory few dare to speak out loud: the theory of the Flocores. These supposed beings, hidden within the folds of Brazilian folklore, are said to be more than simple tales created to entertain children or frighten travelers. According to this mysterious perspective, they might be real, entities that breathe, watch, and even interfere in the lives of those who dare to acknowledge them. To the skeptic, folklore is nothing but cultural storytelling, a way of explaining natural phenomena before science had the answers. But to the believer, folklore is not just symbolic, it is evidence of forces beyond our understanding. The idea of the Flocores arises from this second view. What if the myths of Brazil are not only stories but actual reflections of spiritual beings dwelling in parallel dimensions? What if these myths are masks worn by entities that have always been here, waiting to be recognized? This introduction sets the stage for a journey into one of the most chilling and fascinating theories of Brazilian mysticism. The Flocores theory does not simply classify the Saisai, Curupira, or Iera as cultural artifacts. It suggests that these figures are living egregores, born from centuries of storytelling and collective belief. They are spiritual echoes that gained weight, form, and intention. They exist in the invisible corridors of reality, feeding on human attention, thriving in the imagination, and manifesting themselves in moments of contact that defy logic. But here's where the enigma grows darker. Are these Flocores benevolent guardians of nature and tradition, or are they tricksters feeding on fear and superstition? Some traditions portray them as protectors, Curupira defending the forest, Iera guarding the rivers. Yet others paint them as mischievous, dangerous, even demonic. This duality, the uncertainty of their true nature, makes the theory of the Flocores more terrifying. Because if they are real, then the line between story and entity is shattered, and everything we call myth becomes a potential door to another dimension. In this series, we will question, are the Flocores mere figments of imagination? Or are they echoes of an ancient spiritual ecosystem that coexists with humanity, unseen yet ever-present? Are they memories of the land itself, crystallized into forms that appear to those who are sensitive enough to perceive them? Or are they trickster entities, feeding on belief and shaping themselves into whatever image humans can understand? The theory of the Flocores demands that we reconsider not only folklore, but also the very nature of belief, spirituality, and reality. And the deeper we dig, the more unsettling the questions become. Because if Flocores are indeed entities, then every forest path, every riverbank, and every shadowed hill in Brazil could be hiding something alive, watching, waiting, and whispering through the veil of myth. The folklore of Brazil, a land of living myths. Brazilian folklore is unlike any other in the world. It is not a simple collection of bedtime stories or rural superstitions. It is a living, breathing tapestry of myths woven from the collision of three powerful cultural forces: the indigenous tribes, the African slaves brought to the New World, and the European settlers who arrived with their saints, their demons, and their fears. This cultural crucible gave birth to legends that are at once beautiful and terrifying, figures that reflect the raw essence of the Brazilian land itself. Take the Saisai, for instance, the mischievous one-legged trickster who appears in whirlwinds, smoking his pipe, playing pranks on travelers. To a child, he is just a funny character. But to the Flocore theory, Saisai is something else, a spiritual manifestation of chaos, a reminder that the unseen world is never fully under human control. The very idea of a being that slips between dimensions through dust and wind suggests a connection to forces far older than colonial Brazil. Or consider the Curupira, the forest guardian with flaming hair and backward feet. His role is to protect the forest from hunters and those who exploit it. But the strange detail of his backward feet, leading men to walk in circles until they collapse, feels less like a fairy tale and more like a metaphysical warning. Nature itself has tricks to defend itself, embodied in entities that are both feared and respected. The Iera, the water siren, emerges from rivers to lure men with her beauty. Is she merely a tale to keep fishermen from drowning, or is she an aquatic spirit connected to the same archetypes as the mermaids of Europe and the Yemanja of African tradition? Her presence in Brazilian folklore suggests a universal archetype, water spirits, manifesting in a uniquely Brazilian form. Then there is the Boitata, the fiery serpent of the night, protecting the fields and forests. Descriptions of glowing serpents slithering across the land echo both indigenous fire myths and modern UFO phenomena. Could this be an early description of an unexplained aerial phenomenon, misunderstood by ancient eyes and translated into the shape of a giant serpent? What unites all these myths is their intensity, their ability to inspire awe and fear simultaneously. They are not gentle stories. They are dangerous, often violent, deeply tied to the natural forces of Brazil. This raises the question, are these figures purely symbolic, or do they reveal the presence of entities that have always been here, manifesting as myth to cloak their true forms? Folklore, in this sense, becomes a survival manual written in metaphor. And the Flocores might be its hidden authors, whispering through culture, ensuring that humans remember they are never truly alone. Flocores as spiritual entities, egregores of the people. Here lies the true heart of the Flocore theory, the possibility that myths are not inventions, but creations. Created not by individuals, but by the collective human mind. In occult traditions, such creations are called egregores or thought forms. They are born from belief, fueled by emotion, and sustained by ritual. If enough people believe in something, it takes on a life of its own, moving beyond the imagination and into the fabric of reality. In this sense, the Flocores are not just characters. They are entities sculpted by centuries of faith, fear, and storytelling. Imagine countless generations retelling the tale of the Curupira around fires in the jungle. Each word spoken, each image imagined, becomes energy deposited into the astral plane. Over time, this energy crystallizes into a being. At first, it may be shapeless, but with centuries of belief, it gains structure, personality, and power. The entity becomes real, not because it existed before, but because humanity willed it into existence. But here lies the darker implication. Once created, egregores do not always remain obedient. Some develop independence. Some hunger for more energy, more attention, more belief. They begin to influence human thought, manipulating stories to ensure they remain alive in culture. Could this explain why certain myths endure for centuries, while others fade into obscurity? Are the Flocores actively ensuring their own survival by embedding themselves into Brazilian identity? The trickster Saisai, for instance, thrives because children are still warned about him. The Aira still lingers in popular culture because her archetype is seductive and powerful. The Boitata still haunts imaginations because fire in the night sky is something humans cannot ignore. These myths remain alive because the entities behind them need them to remain alive. In this way, Flocores are symbiotic. They need human belief to survive, but humans also need them, as guardians of memory, as warnings, as reflections of our relationship with nature. They embody both fear and wisdom. Some esoteric thinkers go further, suggesting that the Flocores may not be entirely human-made. Instead, they might be entities that predate humanity, attaching themselves to cultural archetypes as masks. In this view, the myths are not the cause of the entities, they are the disguise. The Curupira is not created by stories of backward feet. Instead, there is a force in the forest that wears this image, because it is a form humans can understand. This transforms the Flocores from mere thought forms into interdimensional tricksters, beings that shift between myth and reality, wearing masks to interact with us, feeding on belief while hiding their true forms. If so, then every time we tell their story, we are not just remembering culture, we are feeding something alive. Guardians of nature and the invisible world. One of the most striking aspects of Brazilian folklore, and therefore the Flocore theory, is its deep connection to nature. Unlike many European myths that center on castles, knights, and domestic life, Brazilian myths are woven into the raw elements of the land: the forests, rivers, storms, and animals. The Flocores, if they are indeed entities, are not random. They are guardians, protectors, and sometimes avengers of the natural world. The Curupira's backward feet confuse hunters, leading them astray in endless circles. On the surface, this is a playful trick. But symbolically, and perhaps spiritually, it is a warning. The forest does not forgive exploitation. The entity that manifests as Curupira becomes the very embodiment of ecological balance. The Boitata, a serpent of fire, punishes those who harm the land. Some describe it as protecting the fields and rivers from destruction. In modern terms, it sounds like a mythic representation of environmental justice, an entity that ensures humanity remembers the cost of arrogance against nature. Even the Aira, while seductive and dangerous, is tied to the rivers. She represents both the beauty and the peril of water, reminding humans of its power to sustain life, but also to take it away. In this way, she becomes a guardian of respect, demanding that people treat rivers not as resources to be conquered, but as living forces to be revered. Seen through the lens of spirituality, these beings are more than myths. They are forces of the land itself, wearing masks of story to communicate with humanity. They are reminders that the earth is alive, that every tree and every river carries its own spirit. And the Flocores are the translators of this message, bridges between the human world and the natural order. But here is the eerie thought: if they are guardians, does that mean they are watching? Does that mean they still punish, still trick, still lure? Many people report strange encounters in forests, disorienting paths, whispers in the trees, lights in the night. Could these be modern encounters with Flocores, misunderstood by those who no longer believe? If so, then the Flocores are not relics of the past. They are active forces in the invisible world, guardians of a balance we barely comprehend. And if we ignore them, if we dismiss them as simple fairy tales, we risk angering the very entities that protect the fragile harmony of the natural world. The possibility of contact. Are Flocores watching us? What if the Flocores are not confined to the past? What if they are not just remnants of oral tradition, but active presences that still roam the unseen corners of Brazil? This is the chilling possibility at the heart of the theory, that the Flocores are not just remembered, they are experienced. Countless testimonies describe strange events in forests and rivers, unexplainable whirlwinds that appear out of nowhere, strange lights in the night, eerie laughter in the jungle. Some hunters claim to have followed footprints that led them in circles for hours. Fishermen tell of being lured into dangerous waters by visions of beautiful women. Farmers speak of fiery serpents crossing their fields at night. These stories are dismissed as superstition, but what if they are encounters with entities that still walk among us? The idea of contact changes everything. It means the Flocores are not just echoes of belief, but interactive forces. They watch. They choose when to reveal themselves. They punish, they reward, they test. This places them in the same category as paranormal phenomena around the world. Ghosts, fae, UFO entities, beings that defy categorization, yet repeatedly intrude into human reality. Some researchers have even suggested a connection between the Flocores and ufology. The Boitata, for instance, resembles glowing orbs and serpentine lights reported in the sky. The Curupara's disorienting tricks mirror experiences of missing time in alien abduction cases. Could the Flocores be part of a wider family of interdimensional beings, appearing in different forms to different cultures? If so, the Flocores may not only be Brazilian, they may be universal, wearing local masks. Yet the Brazilian versions remain unique in their raw intensity, tied deeply to the land's wildness. The question then becomes terrifying. If they can contact us, what do they want? Protection of nature? Sustenance through belief? Or something darker? Some testimonies suggest Flocores feed on fear, confusion, or even human energy. If that is true, then every encounter is not just a mystical moment, it is an exchange, where the human pays a price. Are we being watched by the Flocores every time we enter the forest, every time we approach a river, every time we whisper their names in a story? And if so, how many of us have already encountered them without realizing it? We return, finally, to the central question: what are the Flocores? Are they myths, born from the imagination of a diverse and creative people? Or are they entities, beings that dwell in unseen realms, feeding on belief and manifesting through story? Perhaps the most unsettling answer is both. The Flocores may exist in the liminal space where myth becomes reality, where belief becomes substance, where thought becomes entity. They may be born from us, yet independent of us. They may be guardians, protectors, or predators. And in truth, we may never know which. What we do know is that folklore is not dead. It is alive, breathing, whispering in every culture. And in Brazil, this whisper is louder, more visceral, more mysterious. The Flocores are not merely entertainment. They are a reminder that the unseen world is closer than we think, and that the boundary between imagination and existence is far thinner than we dare to admit. So the next time you hear a story of the Saisai, the Curupara, the Iara, or the Boitata, ask yourself, am I hearing a fairy tale? Or am I feeding an entity that is listening, watching, waiting? Because if the theory of the Flocores is true, then the myths of Brazil are not just stories. They are doors. And every time we open them, something might be stepping through,